Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
Indeed, good morning to you. I nearly said Happy Democracy Day, but that has now been shifted now. It's till June 12th. That's when we will eventually be able to say that greeting. But this is what we have now. It's the anniversary, or the first anniversary of the Bola Tinubu administration, and also 25 years of Nigeria's Fourth Republic. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Maokwe Yusuf.
I think congratulations to Nigerians is also in order. 25 years of democracy, first time in our history. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, I know they'll tell you, depends on, well, if it's for democracy, at least let it keep rolling. But what a dramatic scenario. But by the way, first of all, let's show you this lovely scene. I hope we can. It's in Zamfara state at the moment. So even though the weather here in Abuja pretty chilled and calm, so after the heavy rains last night, so it was quite okay. It wasn't that bad. So if you take a look at what we show you from Zamfara state, is the scenery that we show you here this morning, and well, I'm not sure that is coming up as of yet. Well, there you go. That's right there, lovely scene. So moving away from, just trying to go to different parts of the country and see how that works there. So that's what you see right there this morning.
Well, you can see that dam, a lovely view. I mean, I think water always has a very soothing effect when you see it, especially as a body of water. Look at that, Bakery Dam it's called. It's in Maradun area of Zamfara state. Really beautiful one. The question is, how are we harnessing this particular resource? You know, apart from using it for electricity, are we also using it for irrigation, which is something that would assist farming all year round? That's a big question, but certainly, Chamberlain, I cannot deny that this is something quite soothing to look at. Aya, don't you agree?
Honestly, again, Maokwe and Chamberlain, I am seeing a movie. I'm sorry. I'm just seeing a movie.
This movie star.
Sincerely. I mean, these sites are just amazing. These sites are amazing. Well, just to also put it in perspective, this is Zamfara State, as have been mentioned to you, that particular dam. We understand that there is a live event that's going to be taking place in Zamfara this morning, and of course, only on the DSTV platform will be taking you there. But if you have to be with us here, you know the other platforms to go to. Right this moment, the weather in Zamfara State is 30 degrees centigrade. The humidity is 62%, and it is partly cloudy right now. But it doesn't look like it, does it? Maokwe, Chamberlain.
Well, not quite, but all the same, thankful whichever way. But yeah, we'll come to some of the scenarios playing itself out. But today in Abuja, in terms of what you expect to happen, you know, Labour has been up and about, up in arms with the government concerning what they have to agree with the minimum wage. And you'd expect that perhaps Minister of State for Labour, a comment or two, maybe not. But this morning, the Minister of State for Labour will be meeting with the leadership. That's the leadership of the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian University, SANU, and Non-Academic Staff Union of Educational and Associated Institutions, NASS, today. So, of course, many will be expecting, what's the update on the minimum wage? If they understand there's a stalemate, do we expect further negotiations or what? Because Labour, as far as they're concerned, say, look, they know what the last resort will be, strike.
Well, it's a good thing Labour is still sitting down with the federal government to negotiate a number of things. This is in spite of the fact that they had already given an ultimatum to say, look, at the end of this month, if we're not able to reach something, or if we're not, initially, don't forget that there was a pullout.
Yeah.
Labour did pull out and then set an ultimatum that they wanted to be able to achieve something at the end of this month, failing which they'll go on strike. Now, the question was, if you pulled out, how are we supposed to negotiate? But thankfully, we've been saying over the last couple of days that even though they've not been able to come to any agreement, we hear figures being bandied about. Oh no, it's 497 now. Oh no, the federal government has opted to 60,000. It's still very far off. It doesn't look like a compromise is anywhere soon. And today is May the 29th, just in case we're not very certain how close to the end of the month we are. But SANU and NASS, they have also had separate issues. Don't forget that when this administration took over, the federal government was owing ASU about 8 months, which he said he wasn't going to pay because the lecturers were not at work. That's what he said. But later on, the president did give them 4 months, I think, as some measure of grace. As SANU and NASS are saying, look, we're also on strike, and we have not been paid. Why wouldn't you extend the same graciousness you extended? If it was graciousness, you extended to ASU as you would to us. That's the big question. So that's aside the number of other issues that they have as well. It will be interesting to see how it is that the Minister of State for Labor is able to sort that out. I guess that will be part of it. But don't also forget that ASU is now saying, look, in many other places, when work is lost, it is lost. ASU, as an organization, we have been able to catch up on the job lost. So you are not doing us any favors by paying us 4 months. We need you to pay us the arrears. That we have been able to catch up on the backlog of things that we had to do. I do not know how that is going to go down, but that's also part of the conversation. So don't be surprised if you see ASU also coming out very soon again to start pressing for its own demands. Wow. That will be one of the many things we'll be pressing for.
I guess governance never really rests, does it? But, part of that conversation this morning will also continue at 10 o'clock this morning when we bring you Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. And we'll be focusing on infrastructural development in 1 year. Remember all of that conversation about abandoned projects all over the nation, particularly federal government projects. Well, is that part of what we're going to be talking about during Business Morning on Sunrise Daily? Please wait until 10 a.m. this morning to see. In the meantime, Chamberlain, you want to take us through the papers?
Let's go ahead and take you through some of the dailies here today. Have a look at Vanguard newspaper. Strike looms as minimum wage talks end in deadlock again. It's a big geek here. FG, OPF add 3,000 naira to earlier offers. Labour challenges government to break down offer. Nationwide strike appears inevitable in June. Organised labour's demand may endanger job security as part to OPS. So there you go. All of that associated with a big lead here this morning on the front page of Vanguard newspaper. And then Business Day, Tinubu's shock therapy causes pain for Nigerians. That's our Business Day. And then the Nigerian Observer, first anniversary, Tinubu storms chest as ministers give account. Obasanjo points fingers. And then quite a number of other dailies here. Daily time of FG will match 200 billion naira to tackle food insecurity, tame inflation. So there you go. That's some of the dailies there for you this morning.
So those are some of the headlines on the front pages this morning. So yes, a lot of focus on the first year anniversary of this administration. Of course, you have different perspective in terms of what has been done, what has not been done. But we'll also keep tabs on the National Assembly because only yesterday, Mr. Bayo Onanuga, Special Advisor on Information and Strategy to the President, did put up a statement. President Tinubu to address joint sitting of National Assembly tomorrow being today. And he was quite emphatic. And then he did say the President will not make a broadcast to the nation on Wednesday to celebrate his first anniversary as the leader of Nigeria. Instead, the president will address a joint session of the National Assembly, which has lined up a program to commemorate 25 years of the nation's democratic journey at both the executive and legislative levels. President Tinubu's speech will dwell on the achievements of his administration and Nigeria's democracy since the military ceded power in 1999. Former Senate President, Senator David Mark, former Speaker of the House of Representatives, and now President Tinubu's Chief of Staff, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, are all lined up to address the parliament. Also lined up to speak is a former military ruler, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, who handed over power to civilian administration in 1999. At the end of the speeches, President Tinubu will commission the National Assembly Library and Resource Center, now to be known as Bola Ahmed Tinubu Building, signed by Onodoga, Special Advisor on Information and Strategy, 28 May 2024. So after that mouthful of narratives, it turns out that what? It's for nothing.
Well, that's what it seemed, because we now heard we saw another statement from the special advisor to the president, Ajuri Ngelale, who released another statement saying that in commemoration of May 29 and the first anniversary of the president, in furtherance of his commitment to delivering good governance, President Bola Tinubu has embarked on the inauguration of strategic projects across the country. That's what he said. He says, in view of public commentary, yeah, I found that interesting. In view of public commentary concerning the president delivering a speech before a joint sitting of the National Assembly tomorrow, May 29, 2024, it is important to state that this information is false and unauthorized, as the office of the president was not involved in the planning of the event. So it's quite interesting that it says, in view of public commentary, will we call the Special Advisor on Information and Strategy public commentary? Is there something wrong with the president's media team?
If it's out there already, it's in the public.
Yeah.
So if the public is responding to it, that's part of public commentary.
Yeah, but the public was responding to an initial statement. I think that should have referred to the initial statement released.
So that didn't say, well, public commentary fueled or possibly fueled by what? By this? Well, so the thing is,
the public didn't just, bring it up from their own heads. It came from somewhere. It came from somewhere, So this would have been great, though, because don't forget that before now there had been calls for the president to address that there needs to be a time of the year when the president addresses the National Assembly. Very similar to what we see in the United States, where there's a State of the Union address. And this would have been quite an auspicious occasion to do such a thing. But then if there was no proper planning and proper communication, you would think that, all of the president's advisors on communication will be very good at this. But to think that, this is now coming out that the president is not addressing the National Assembly as initially thought, certainly is not a very nice one. It leaves a lot to be desired, doesn't it?
Because absolutely. Because when when Ajuri says, look, that the president was not involved in the planning.
In the planning, yes, indeed.
That's very, very key.
So where did that come from? Was it the National Assembly? Was it the National Assembly that did not carry the president along? Who precisely didn't carry the presidency along? So
the thing is, with all of that plan, while it went on, some of the conversation we heard behind the scenes is that, even themselves were not exactly sure if the president was going to be there or not. Because the information came through at the last minute that, yes, it was going to be there. Even though that doesn't necessarily mean by that singular action that's why. Because sometimes they keep it close to the chest if it's going to be there, the CNC, to ensure that they also preserve certain things. But that notwithstanding, questions are asked. So what process or processes does Mr. Ononuga's statement go through before it's released?
Indeed.
Then, because this is not the first time we're seeing this back and forth, this seeming sharp disagreement between both of them. Now, for Ajuri to have then issued his own statement, and then, because we also are in the National Assembly checking to see if it's going to happen, they are going ahead and preparing for their own activity. They already have the activity schedule. So whether or not the president will be there, I think the activity will go on, most likely. But I'm not sure at the moment we'll get updates too if there's any security detail of the president in National Assembly right now. If you don't have that advanced party, like this time, it's doubtful that he will be there.
So it's unclear. Well, maybe there's nothing unclear there. If you can read English language, you can read this. But the thing is, you know, if the president shows up maybe by surprise, would he then negate this statement? Will he be seen to be taking sides in what appears to be?
So that's the thing.
Is it a struggle of authority? I'll call it now.
Well, maybe we will now say, in view of these two public statements, which is out there fueling public commentary now as a result of this. We've got Professor Agbo Madaki here with us. He is a professor of international human rights law and is a dean of Bayes University, Abuja. He's a visiting professor of applied law from Durban University of Technology, Durban in South Africa. He's here with us in the studios. Good morning, Prof. Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, we're going to talk about communication, so you might add it to your narrative as well. Yeah, in view of all that is making the rounds now, I mean, when you see all of these things from this, what impression do you get about what's going on?
What exactly are you talking about?
First of all, we'll go to the 1 year anniversary, but these two narratives coming from the president's spokesman.
Now, what are the narratives?
Confusion.
I mean,
first of all, Mr. Ononuga says the president will address the nation. So we expect a State of the Nation kind of address.
Yes.
Then the special advisor to the president, Mr. Ajurin Galale, says, no, he's not involved in all of that planning. So public commentary that is not happening today.
Well, the truth of the matter is that it is a very cardinal principle of statehood and nationalism and constitutional issues that sovereignty belongs to the people. And that sovereignty belongs to the people is not a mere idiomatic expression, but the foundation of our constitutionalism in Nigeria, as the case may be, because all organs of government, all the tiers of government derive their power from the Constitution. And the Constitution belongs to the people. Sovereignty belongs to the people. That much is captured in Chapter 2, dealing with the fundamental principles and directive principles of state policy in Nigeria. That be the case, it means those whom we have elected and those appointed owes their office to the people. They are there by virtue of the power that have been conceded to them by the people. So having spent 1 year in governance as elected representative of the people who derives their legitimacy and power from the people, I think it is mandatory and it behoves on them to give account. State of the Nation address, by whatever name called, is simply a matter of accountability. That you are returning to the people in a town hall meeting on a larger scale through the electronic media, as the case may be, you know, to let the people know the journey so far, in contradistinction to the promises you made either by way of your campaign or your inaugural speech when we were inaugurated as the president of the country. And I think for an auspicious day like this today, there should be no reason whatsoever why Mr. President will not address the nation, whether it is through the National Assembly or not. But I think, and I insist, that Nigerians are entitled to know, to have the scorecard placed before them on a day like this.
Indeed. Well, this is not what we're getting now. What we're getting seems to be a squabble and a battle for supremacy between the president's spokesmen. Because from what we see here, the statement from the president's special advisor, who's obviously senior in rank to Mr. Bayo Onanuga, says that the public commentary there is false and unauthorized, as the office of the president was not involved in the planning of the event. So it seems that due process has truncated or usurped what ideally would have been a good idea.
Well, I think this is a very sad commentary on the Tinubu presidency, because they are supposed to work for the same principle and for the common goods of Nigerians, as the case may be. Otherwise, ordinarily, in terms of information dissemination and management, one would have been tempted to conclude that this government have done very well so far. But in the twilight, on a day as special as this, that this type of kissing is coming up is a very bad commentary on the administration. And I will not put the blame at the doorstep of these two principal officers of Mr. President or staff of Mr. President, because the Constitution of Nigeria is very clear, you know, under Section 5 for the Constitution, the executive power of the Federation resides in the person of the president. So every other person is delegating powers onto them. So when we have this type of very ugly scenario, we expect Mr. President to rise up to the occasion and take very decisive action.
Indeed. Well, interestingly, I mean, as my colleague has highlighted, it is, and you have also said, it's the first year of President Tinubu in office. But interestingly, it's 25 years, quarter of a century since our democracy began this day in 1999. And 25 years down the line, I think we can no longer, some people will say, are we still a, what's that word we like to use? Nascent democracy. We've always liked to use that term. But now that we're doing a quarter of a century, looking back, how far would you say we've come? Are we making progress? Are we, are the challenges overwhelming our democracy? What precisely are your views?
Well, in terms of the very basic understanding and definition of democracy, the fact that we have been able to sustain the practice of democracy in Nigeria the last 25 years actually calls for celebration. If you look at the checkered history of Nigeria from 1960, where we have consistently in the past had military interruption. We used to call it military interregnum, but for a very long time, it was more of a civilian aberration or interregnum because Tafa Balewa's government was just for 6 years, Shehu Shagari for 4 years, whereas Gowon was there for 9 years, Babangida for 8 years. But we now have a new pleasant aroma of democracy the last 25 years. And if you ask me, that in itself is a monumental achievement and a good testament that democracy can survive in Africa and in other developing countries, as the case may be. And if you ask me as somebody who is interested,
as we're asking you,
yes, in a human right, notwithstanding the ugly side of democracy with all the warts and death, you place it on an invisible scale. I think democracy has worked very well for Nigeria. Even the fact that we can sit in this studio and discuss the government and then express our feeling and angst even against the non-addressing of the nation by the president shows that democracy is working.
Let me stretch out a little bit to the judiciary,
yes.
Which is a very important fulcrum in tripod of this democracy. I think democracy at all. 25 years down the line, would you say that, because I mean, when you say justice must not just be done, but must be seen to have been done, there's a certain expectation that the people also matter in all of this. So from what your perspective as one who is in that field, 25 years on, are we better, legally speaking, in that sector?
As a matter of fact, there's no way you can discuss democracy in Nigeria and separate or divorce it, from the judiciary. Because like I said earlier, all these organs of government derive their power from the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And Section 6 of the Nigerian Constitution is very clear. It said the judicial power of the Federation is vested in the courts created by this Constitution. And then when we talk about sustainability of democracy in Nigeria in the last 25 years, there's no way one will not give credit to the Nigerian judiciary because the Electoral Act, which is a derivative of the Nigerian Constitution, because the Constitution that empowers the National Assembly to make the electoral act as the case may be. And you see that all electoral disputes in this country can only be resolved by the tribunal or court of law established for that purpose. And we have had very challenging and intractable scenario arising from the various elections in the last 25 years. And the judiciary has remained the final arbiter in terms of resolving this conflict. I'll give very recent examples as the case may be. Look at the decision of the election tribunal in Kano State, and also the appeal panel, and then vis-a-vis that of the Supreme Court. Then the decisions of the tribunal in Plateau State affecting virtually all the PDP elected members of the House of Assembly, and then the governor, and then that of the Court of Appeal, and that of the Supreme Court. So the truth of the matter is that the Nigerian judiciary has actually saved this country from implosion. Having said that, that is not to say that it's been all Eldorado. The truth of the matter is that when we talk of the judiciary, greater reference is made more to the person and the human being that sits on the bench. This is the person that constitutes basically what the judiciary is. And because they are not perfect, and they also acknowledge that they are not infinite, neither are they perfect. So there are flaws in the system. Look at what is happening currently in Kano State with conflicting decisions of courts of almost coordinate jurisdiction. It is quite an embarrassment.
What can you tell us about the impression Nigerians had about the Supreme Court decision of the presidential election?
I like being very, very honest and truthful. I was in the legal team for one of the presidential candidates. I can tell you that except the Electoral Act is further amended, it is going to be an uphill task for any person to challenge the presidential election in this country and win it. One, the cost of collating and gathering material is extremely expensive, and there are deliberate roadblocks put on the part of such litigant by the electoral umpire, which is INEC. And then the time constraint that within this period you must start and conclude it makes it impossible for one to present a good case and win. So, having said that, based upon what was placed before the court, especially at the court of first instance, which is the court of appeal that had the matter, and their decision, the Supreme Court only worked with what was before them, because the Supreme Court will not hear the case all over, but to look at the legal issues that have arisen, from the decision of that lower court, and they gave their decision. The truth of the matter is that whether we like it or not, the citizens of a country have a role to play in how these things are done. The semblance of peace after the judgment shows the fact that Nigerians were ready to move forward.
I am a little concerned, though, because there are those who say, yes, we talk about 25 years of democracy. And those who say, no, this is not democracy. This is not what the people wanted. What we have right now is civilian rule, which is very different from democracy. That the institutions of state, which are supposed to entrench the true will of the people, have been usurped. Take a look at what is happening at the level of the state houses of assembly, which are supposed to be closer to the people, which seem to be more in the pockets of the executive arm of government in almost virtually every state that you look at. What would you say to those who contest that Nigeria is actually practicing a democracy as opposed to a civilian rule?
I think that confusion obviously may have arisen out of the misunderstanding, of what democratic governance is and constitutional democracy. When we talk of constitutional democracy, it's a government elected according to the tenets and the principles of the Constitution. But of course, when we talk about constitutional democracy, is that democracy that one, there's respect for basic human rights and fundamental freedom, and where the will and the opinion of the people matter a lot. So when you talk about the various state house of assembly having been pocketed by the governor, which is true, sadly very, very true, the members of the House of Assembly represent the people in all the constituency, and that is why it has become axiomatic in law. The ignorance of the law is not an excuse, because you have somebody whom you have elected representing you, and it is believed that you are the one making the law. But the side irony and twist of fate in Nigeria is that once this honorable gentleman gets elected and gets inaugurated into the House, they no longer think about the people, they think about their pocket and nothing more. And they are about how to keep on returning to power as the case may be. But I blame it, or I put the blame on the doorstep of the citizen. Because when I say we, the citizens of Nigeria, give unto ourselves this constitution, it is a very, very weighty and important document. That is why the constitution has provided certain control mechanism or safety valve to regulate the conduct of the people that we have elected. How many members of the House of Assembly, Representatives, and Senate that have been recalled? There's the recall mechanism in the Nigerian Constitution. Why can the people not use it? But if you also ask me the same question, I tell you that it's because of the excruciating poverty that the people no longer are bothered about what is happening in government, but survivalism, or how to survive, as the case may be. But like I say, it is indeed very, very, very sad. Because if you ask me, if you are truly representing the people, why in these hard times that Nigerians are finding it very difficult to survive? We no longer talk of 3 square meal in Nigeria. We are talking about just one decent meal, maybe to satisfy just one aspect of the sustainable development goals. And then the government will give you a vehicle that's probably worth about 100 and something million, and you see nothing wrong with it. I was watching the TV yesterday, and the governor of Kaduna State was donating vehicles worth maybe billion, as the case may be, to the security apparatus of the country. And I say, what a misplaced priority. The police, the army, the defense of this country is on the exclusive legislative list. And that's why the federal government takes a chunk of monetary allocation in this country. Why can't that governor use that money in Kaduna State to make life better for his people? But misplaced priority.
Isn't that part of what he's trying to do? Because without security, How can you even start
You see, we cannot eat our cake and have it back. We practice federalism. And the kind of federalism we practice in this country, we have the various legislatures. I mean, the spheres of power. Security, all the arms, the defense, everything is on the exclusive legislative list. And that is why the federal government takes a chunk of all the money entering to the federation account, as the case may be. Then at the state level, they have their parts, they have their functions. So what I'm saying, what is the cause of this insecurity? Number one, more than anything else, whether you like it or not, is poverty. So this money that we are using to donate vehicles to the federal government, that's how I'll put it, make life better for people. Give them education, make sure that they are farming, make sure there's food, make sure there's access to water, make sure there's peace, social justice.
Prof, I'm smiling because some people will argue that you've been away from this country for too long. That's what they're going to say. They're going to say that it means that you're not exactly on the ground in terms of the awareness of where the problems truly lie, that the police, as we know it, has been underfunded for many years, and that, you know, a lot of state governments have had to find ways to see how they can support the police in their states, and see how it is that they can bring security to their people. For instance, the Lagos state government, in addition to having its own neighborhood watch, also has a trust fund with which it supports the Nigeria police. So there are those who say that, look, this is now a thing that state executives must do if the police is going to be functional in their states.
See, I can assure you that even Nigerians in the diaspora probably having more concern with what is happening at home. A lot of them desire to return to Nigeria if peace and security is guaranteed. But I am telling you that it's misplaced priority. Buy 1,000 vehicles and donate to the Benue State Police Command. You know, robbery and crime have become so sophisticated that it's not a matter of using vehicles to pursue them. The average Nigerian police vehicle that you see on the street probably does not have 10 liters of fuel in their vehicle. I am telling you, we watch movies from all over the world. Have you ever seen a scene all your life in Nigeria where you see police chasing any criminals with siren blaring or on their motorbike? So because it's gone beyond this thing, you need to, what they need is proper training and then the right equipment to do the job. Have you ever, I mean, why don't you use drone? Why don't you use drone? Intelligent gathering. When we're young, we hear of CID. You know, they mingled. You know, you don't see them, but they get results. So it's not an issue of coming in aid. What I'm saying is that if you think that the governors are responsible or the chief security officer of their state, there's nothing wrong in us amending the constitution and align state police. If you have state police as far back as 1896 in Calabar and in Lagos, where we didn't even have Nigeria as a country, and after the amalgamation for the first time, we had the national police, for as the case may be, and then by 1918, the local government were in charge of prison. Tell me how come 100 years after, we are not strong enough to have state police?
Well, that conversation is certainly still on. I mean, that conversation around having state police or not to have state police. But I'm also looking at other issues. You've talked about the impoverishment of the people, the poverty. And some people would say, look, when Nigeria's the citizens of Nigeria were yearning for democracy. Part of what they, apart from the lack of freedom which they felt under the military administration, what they also wanted was development. They believed that their freedom will give them the capacity to be able to do so much more for the economy. It was supposed to be a freeing up of the economy, but it doesn't appear that that has been the case. It appears that yes, we have made quite a lot of money from crude oil sales, etc., but the development is yet to be felt at the very bottom level. Only 2 days ago, we heard the Attorney General of the Federation talking about how he thinks that the state CX, the state electoral commissions, should be scrapped. And an autonomy should be given to the local government as a result of the poverty which is currently happening at that particular level and lack of governance getting to that level. So for you, when you look at the fact that our democracy seems to be from top down rather than from bottom up, can it really be described as a government of the people?
If you ask me, a lot of people may want to say that we don't have a democratic constitution. That probably the military gave us, but don't forget that we have had consistent amendments to the constitution, first, second, third, alteration, fourth. as the case may be.
And we're having another one now.
Yes, and it is a work in the progress. Ideally, what the tiers of government recognized under the Constitution is the ideal thing. You have the federal government, you have the state government, and then the local government. Some may want to argue that the local government is not recognized as a tier of government. Is the ideal situation. If you realize the state governments do not relate with the federal government as a subordinate government, it's more like equal. They can hold the federal government to ransom, in constitution making and constitutional amendment as the case may be. But unfortunately, we do not have that strong institution to make the local government system work. So because of that, because constitutional engineering is an ongoing process, that's why people are arguing that Section 7 of the Nigerian Constitution ought to be amended. Because Mwaboze will argue that the Nigerian Constitution does not create local government, which is true. That's what people don't know. The Nigerian Constitution did not create the local government.
But it recognizes them.
God bless you. I was going to say it, that the Nigerian Constitution only recognizes that local government system must exist. That's what Section 7 says. The system of democratically elected local government is hereby under this Constitution. And therefore, the rider is the problem. It now gives the State House of Assembly the power to establish them and their functions as the case may be. And because it is federalism, so look, the state have your own independent electoral body and organize it, which has become total shara as the case may be. So I agree with the Honorable Attorney General that hence the local government system have been completely emasculated by the governors that have become their, cash cow, that you call as the case may be. It is now time for us to take a sober reflection and look at the local government system. It's not the first time that the National Electoral Body organized. The essence of having the INEC, as the case may be, to organize the election for the local is to ensure transparency in the electoral process. One, which is more important, how the candidates emerge under the various political parties and to give them a semblance of a level playing field to contest this election. Instead of what we have now, that the governors handpick the so-called candidate and it must be the government in power that will sweep it. And that is why we have problem at the local government level, because what we have are not elected chairmen, but appointed chairmen, and then he who pays the piper dictates the team.
So, do you agree with those who think that if we don't amend Section 1626,
yes,
1626 of the Constitution, we're just scratching the surface?
Yeah, that this with allocations of revenue as the case may be.
Yeah,
no, that is quite true. That is quite, you see, either we are devolving more powers to the state. If we are doing that, then we must review Section 162. And if we are talking about autonomy for the local government, it will also involve physical autonomy or financial autonomy, as the case may be, whereby their money will go straight from the federation account, to each of the 774 local government that we have in this country. And then it will also become necessary that maybe then the power to legislate for the local government probably should also naturally go to the National Assembly. Otherwise, so long as the State House of Assembly has the power to make law for them, they've made it so easy for a chairman to be removed, to be suspended, to be impeached.
Okay. Ayo.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. Prof, let me begin by asking this rather disturbing question. Is it to say that there is no role for the chairman of a local government in the Constitution? Can you hear me? Prof, can you hear me now?
Is there no role for the chairman?
If you can hear me, Prof, the question that I'm asking is it to say that there is no role?
What you
I know
have
that there are functions. There are functions of local government, yes, but there is no one
but the creation of the office and the office of the chairman, deputy chairman, speaker, and the legislative council of the local government is by a law made by the State House of Assembly.
So, in that regard, because I'm looking at Section 7 all over again, and it is indeed true that it says the system of local government by democratically elected local government councils is under this Constitution guaranteed. Nothing can exist on nothing, Prof. It says the system of local government by democratically elected local government councils is under this Constitution guaranteed. Perhaps it's some kind of presupposition, but hey, it means that they have to exist for them to be guaranteed. Don't you think so?
I do not think you and I are singing in discordant tunes as the case may be. Like, you will agree with me that what Section 7 says that this system is hereby guaranteed under this Constitution. But go ahead and read out what the remaining portion is saying. It is very clear in summary that it is the responsibility of the State House of Assembly to enact that law for their establishment. That's why the various laws are called local government establishment law. For the establishment and functions as the case. So if a state decides not to pass that law, there will be crisis. And in making that law, they determine what the functions of that local government will be. They decide the tenure of the local government. That's why you have in some states is 3 years, others 4 years, others is 2 years, as the case may be. So the point that I'm making is that the Constitution only recognizes that this system must exist. But the how they come alive and giving birth to is left to the State House of Assembly. And that is where the problem is, my brother.
Well, that is certainly a problem, one that has caught the attention of the federal government over the years. The previous administration tried to do something about it through the Finance Regulations Council and all of that. But here we have now a situation where the current federal government, under the Attorney General of the Federation, taking the state governors to court for that particular function. You're correct. That's what the Constitution says, that the state, every state has to guarantee the existence of local government councils. However, if you look at sub 2, it says, sub 3, it says, it shall be the duty of a local government council under the state to participate in economic planning and development of the area referred to in subsection 2 of this Constitution. This means then, or correct me if I'm wrong, that the local government councils, the administrations, ought to be a part of the economic planning in the states, subject to that same law. Do you think that is something that happens in any way, manner, shape, or form?
The way and manner local governments are operated in the country is an open session for everybody to see. Are they actually involved in any form of economic planning in this country, as the case may be? It is a very sad irony that if one wants to talk about the golden era of local government administration in Nigeria, we are probably looking at the military era, especially with the Dasuki reform of 1976, as the case may be. That was the golden era that you have a professor contested as chairman, you have retired civil servant, highly educated, well-prepared and well-equipped people contesting for the office of chairman of local government, even as secretary of local government. But what we have now, because the power to bring about the establishments of this local government and their compositions and their functions and their tenure is warehoused at the state level through the State House of Assembly, what we have in reality does not in any way place them in any good state to contribute to the economic policies of this country, as the case may be. A lot of the local government administration is simply just for them to collect salaries and go back home. No project is taking place. And that is why, sadly, most Nigerians are fixated about the federal government, what the federal government is doing and not doing, until we begin to hold other tiers of government responsible, especially the state governors, call a spade, and then it sees that the local government must come alive. And then we also look at the local government, we also put our attention to the local government. Things will not improve in this country. At the commencement of this democracy, which is no longer nascent, 1999, in my state in particular, in Benue State, especially when Senator Jerak, the local government in Benue State had free hand. There was so much money that people were going to their local government to do contracts. They were not interested in going to Makodi. And that is the era we envisage. That the local government will be well funded. They can also generate their own revenue. Now look at the irony of it. While the governors are taking the statutory allocation meant for the local government, they ignore that provision of the Constitution that allows them that money generated by the state government, that a percentage of it under law should go to the local government. But they are not funding the local government. But they take the little that comes to the local government.
Well, not a little irony, Prof. Not a little irony at all. There are those of us who grew up in the 90s and can recall vividly how how much capacity the local government, particularly in Lagos, where I was growing up at the time, had to do things by themselves. They were very, very economically viable and all of that. But that also takes me to the fact that something that you just mentioned. People are fixated on the federal government. No doubt about it. So why do you think it seems that more citizen engagement is focused on the federal government as opposed to the states that are closer to them?
You know, it's a carryover of the military regime, you know, which practiced centralism as the case may be. You know, because from 1966 or 7, when we had the first coup, you realize that under Aguiro's, it came up with the unification decree. And then a successive military government, because of the command structure of the military, ensures that all the powers in the federation were concentrated at the federal government. And because of that successive constitution that we have had, you realize that whereas the over 60-something item on the exclusive legislative list, if you look at what you call the concurrent legislative list, they are just, I don't want to use the word useless power because no power is useless, but it's not something that's substantial and weighty that can make the state strong. So because of the over-concentration of power at the federal level, it is very natural, a natural consequence of it, that Nigerian citizens will look more to the federal government. Because if you talk, the defense of this country is in their hand, financial policy is in their hand, security is at the federal level, everything, if not until recently, even tertiary education. You know, and again, I'm sorry to say, it was under the military government that education was decentralized, whereby state government and individuals can have their own universities, and then they broadcasting too, you know, electronic media in particular. Otherwise, before it was only state and federal government. So I think for us to expect less from the federal government, it will mean that more power is being given to the state. But like a Nigerian citizen who has been back in Nigeria since 2017, not recently anymore, my biggest fear is that the way and manner majority of the governors in this country have carried on, do they deserve more powers? Do they deserve more powers? We find ourselves at a crossroad now that Nigerians are saying, do we even really need these states anymore? Do we really need local government anymore? So I think we need to introspectively do soul searching and decide what exactly we want going forward in this country.
How about those who will argue with you, Prof, that, well, perhaps it's because we didn't have enough checks and balances on the governors through the National Assembly, through the State Houses of Assembly, because the federal government, of course, does not have that kind of hold on the National Assembly anymore. The first term of the Buhari administration already tells us that. But in the states, it's a little different, right? So do you see a situation now where we can actually create enough checks and balances that can, you know, control, check some of the authorities that the state governments have?
You see, if you look at the American Constitution, or the Declaration of Independence, you know, talking about we hold this as a truth that all men are created equal and endowed with our creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these and some rights are mentioned. And he said, for this purpose, government is put in place, and that if government policy becomes antithetical, that such the people have the power to rise and change it. Now, in modern times, this change comes through periodic elections. When a government is bad, the check and balance is either impeachment, okay, or recall, as the case may be. But if you're not able to do this, that's why the Constitution, the biggest check and balance is the periodic elections, to examine their scorecard, and those that are not doing well are removed. So the citizens also have the blame. When you keep on re-electing somebody that's not performing, then your right to complain is extinguished. So I think what we need most is for the Nigerian citizens to be capacitated mentally. That is what some people will call food infrastructure. You need to have food in your stomach before you can complain, you know. But even there, I do believe that the power of the people is very enormous, and I can actually exercise it through the electoral process and replace a government that is not doing well. That is the biggest check and balances.
Okay, well, I guess that can be left in that space for now. But just this one last one from me, Prof. What's your assessment of the collaboration between the Tinubu administration and the state governments in the past 1 year? Do you think it is something that's been significant, or is something that's still crawling? Earlier on, when the federal government, when the president took over, he announced food security, an emergency in the food security sector, and a number of other announcements like that. What would be your take on whether or not there's been significant collaboration between the Tinubu government and the state governments in the past 1 year?
You know, in doing this, we need to do a foray into the past by doing comparative analysis between the way President Tinubu has related with the state governors and president before him. In that regard, with the greatest respect to the other statesman, President Olusegun Obasanjo, he was purely autocratic, and he saw governors as head boys. I mean, he was the principals, and governors were basically teachers under him. He had very little regard and respect for them, and with impunity, he was removing governors using the instrumentality of EFCC, the Judicial, the case may be, like happened in Plateau State, in Oyo State, in Anambra State, and a few others. And for Jonathan, I will give you a pass in terms of relationship with governors. For Buhari, unfortunately, Buhari was not the enigmatic leader that we expected. We thought that as a former military head of state and a no-nonsense person, that age was not on his side. But for President Bola Tinubu, I think of all of them, if I have to rate him, I'll call him a Democrat as compared to his predecessors in power.
Just 365 days.
Yes, because he has not really interfered in the governance of the state. Instead, he has had a kind of collaborative relationship with them, regardless of which party they belong.
Isn't it early days yet?
No, I do not think it is. I do not think it is too early. Remember what that ugly saga of President Obasanjo withholding the revenue accruable to local government in Lagos, completely unconstitutional as the case may be. President Tinubu, I think he has allowed the constitution to hold sway, and he has allowed the principles of separation of power to hold sway. If you look at it,
we still have 3 more years.
But if you ask me where I come from, they say for you to know whether a masquerade with that way is at his initial step when he's entering the arena. And if you ask me, considering the cognate experience President Tinubu has had as senator, as governors for 8 years, and kingmaker, I think so far so good. He's not doing badly. Because I think what I'll give to him is his ability to be courageous and bold enough to take decisions. Whether those decisions are in the best interest of Nigeria, I cannot say for now, but I think he's courageous enough to identify, isolate the problem, and take decisions.
I don't know if Nigerians will excuse you on the economic front, because you're a lawyer, so because they will say some of the economic policies have huge question marks. But speaking of which, this democracy of ours, the President Obasanjo at the time, only recently did say, Western liberal democracy is a product of their history, their way of life, their culture. So we in Africa, Nigeria too, adopting it, we made a mistake adopting it. So now he's seeking what he describes as what? Afrocentric democracy, a homegrown democracy. What do you think of that?
You know, it is again. What an irony. He was in power for 8 years. And was a total, absolute ruler that would have amended the constitution to give us the
messenger and the messenger.
Yes, President Obasanjo would have caused the constitution to be amended to give us the type of democracy that he thinks suits our purpose. I do not think it's the practice of the presidential system that's the problem. We had parliamentary system, and yet there was so much corruption, and the military intervened. Look at the type of democracy they have in the country called Rwanda. Rwanda has become the poster boy of democracy in Africa. So if that is what you call Afrocentrism, then it may be attractive. But what I see in Uganda, but even Rwanda, the inherent danger is the fact that President Kigali is doing so well that for now the people are genuinely asking him to stay. But we've not had those type of leaders in Nigeria that we even desire that they should spend 8 years in power. I do not think it's the system of government that's the problem with Nigeria, but the institutions that are very, very weak. If you look at the 16th goal of the Sustainable Development Goal, it talks about peace, prosperity, and strong institution. Until we have strong institution in this country...
Is it the system that will bring about the strong institution?
It's a two-way traffic. It's kind of symbiotic relationship. For instance, when we talk of strong institution, You must have a strong judiciary that we call a spade a spade. You must have strong legislative houses that can look the governor in the face and say, no, we are not giving you this appropriation bill. No, we are going to impeach you. You must also have strong executive that's not afraid of taking decisions. We have lots of institutions in this country. Once they are strong enough, I believe the system can work. Now look at America, from where we are borrowing this presidential system of government from, as the case may be. President Trump is on trial. Clinton was impeached. Of course, no impeachment in America, the father is there, but you are not removed if the upper chamber has not done their work. It's because the culture of immunity is so entrenched in this country, and we all know that nothing will happen.
So how do we solve this if you say, well, it's not about the kind of democracy?
No.
It's about the institutions.
Yes.
So how do we strengthen them if we continue this system of governance that we have?
How do we strengthen the institutions? Take, for example, the Nigerian police. That is very keen to this conversation that we have. The Inspector General of Police thinks that he owes his appointment to Mr. President, which should not be the case. If the members of the Police Service Commission are carefully selected, independent-minded Nigerians,
which is not the case.
Which is not the case. Whose duty will be to look at the coterie of senior police officers and say, this is the best man for the job. We've had strong institutions in this country and it has been sustained. Take the case of NAFDAC under Professor Dorak, who changed the face of public service in this country. You now see every other institution, going on air to give accountability, police radio, this. Up to today, NAFDAC is seen to be doing its job. And there are few institutions in this country that are strong enough. So the kind of person that heads or mans decide in this institution, we cannot separate them from the type of leadership they provide and how strong or weak the institutions may be.
All right, Professor Agbo Madaki is of International Human Rights Law. He's also Dean of Law at Bayes University, Abuja. He's a visiting professor of Applied Law, Durban University of Technology, Durban, South Africa. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much.
All right, business news on Sunrise City will be coming up next, but much later, we'll also bring you updates from the National Assembly.
Morning on Sunrise Daily. I'm in John Mekwa. We'll do about 30 minutes of business before we head back to Sunrise Daily Studios. We begin with the global oil space. Oil prices rose on Wednesday on expectations that major producers will maintain production cuts at a meeting that will be holding virtually on Sunday, at the same time that fuel consumption should begin to rise with the start of peak summer demand season. Looking at the numbers there, we see it's a green one, or it's green for both crude. For Brent, it's $84.49 a barrel after it gained 0.3%. WTI of the United States has hit $80, hovering around at 78.79 for a bit, but now $80.18 a barrel after it gained 0.4%. At this time, increased fighting in the Gaza Strip is contributing to this, and we know that Israeli tanks advanced to the heart of Rafah section, and that also provided some backing for oil prices. Investors are also watching out for the inflation number from the United States. We know that's a major driver of prices. Of course, it affects the decision to cut interest rates or not, and then affects demand of oil at the end of the day. And from there, we'll move to that good news that we saw. Trading activity in the FX was a bit muted yesterday. A lot of attention on CBN's intervention by the central bank in the early hours of the trading season. And so we saw a lot of gains at the close of trade. The market actually closed on NAFEM, which is the major one, 1,173 Naira, 88 Kobo. It opened at, this is a whole lot of jump here. You see it gained more than 12%, 12.35%. So if you see it in number, in value now, from 339 to 173. And then on NAFEX, it went from 1481 to 379. But I mean, the big news here is always the sustenance of it. Mostly it's the first reaction after CBN intervention. But, you know, the things deep down there that should sustain it would be a major need. And that is a major part of the conversation now, that today, especially May 29th, about this time last year, President Bola Tinubu was taking the oath of office. You know, so it's exactly a year since he did that. But before we delve into that, agency banking community have come under fire lately. I know you've seen that from CAC, and we discussed it here a couple of times, where they have not been quiet after the Corporate Affairs Commission directed all POS agents to register with the commission, to the accusation by the EFCC that POS operators and banks are responsible for cash scarcity and empty ATM machines, because sometimes you do wonder why the ATMs do not have cash, but the POS do have. All in a recent press conference, the Association of Mobile Money and Bank Agents in Nigeria, they responded to the allegation, stating that the EFCC should publish a list of agents and bank staff sabotaging cash availability.
Is not directed towards, it does not have the ultimate aim of curbing fraud or fighting crime as the objective. That's not what they want to achieve. They just want to drive revenue, they want to make money, or even find avenues to collect taxes. So that is our position on it. So if they come for the agent bankers, the POS operators, and there is nobody to speak because people think that they are not concerned, they are not agents, eventually they will come for some other group of people. And by that time, there will be nobody to speak for them. So that is why we are calling on the rest of the Nigerian public that this is not just for the POS operators to talk about. This is not only for the POS operators. Everywhere, meaning Nigeria, should be concerned.
Since that statement actually emanated from EFCC, all of us they are looking at us as criminals. So, and we will want EFCC to quickly look at that and see how they can amend that sector. We are ready to work with them. We are ready to convert over 2 million touch points that we have in Nigeria to intelligent gathering points for all of them. So, and also, why are we having cash in agent locations? Why are we not having it in the banking system? There is no correlation between lack of cash in the banks and and availability of cash at agent location. We are happy to work with the CBN. We are happy to work with security agents to ensure that our concern about fraud and security within fintech space, we are able to nib it in the bud and reduce it to the barest minimum.
It's an ongoing conversation between the POS and CAC, and I know that another one is also the one with the BDCs, the BDCs and the central bank. That's also another ongoing conversation. But today is May the 29th. It's time to take a closer look at the administration led by President Bola Tinubu. Today we're looking at infrastructure. I know that on Sunday they had a lot of feathers to their hats. That's, the members of this administration when they did that commissioning of the Lagos Calabar Coastal Road, and it was done here in Lagos with the president. We also had the celebration of the commissioning, official commissioning, because the road has been in use for a while. That's the Oworoshoki Mile 2 area. You have that road that Dangote did do. But today, let's look at more about that infrastructure with the Group Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Honey Treat Group. And he's also an economist that added to his feather. That's Mr. Samson Shoebi. He joins us in the studio. Mr. Shoebi, good morning. Thank you so much for your time. I would have told you congratulations and happy anniversary, but you're not part of the Tinubu administration, so I guess that's not for you. But how has it been in the last 1 year?
Well, I have to commend Mr. President for his bullish exposure outlay, looking at what he's done. On last year, exactly last year, 1 year ago, which was May 29, 2023, his speech on that day opened cans of activities, part of it was the Naira flotation, the Forex flotation, and also the subsidy removal. Those were very, very strong decisions to be made on your first day in the office. And we all have seen how all of this has, been brought into realities into the country. We can see what has happened with the economy, over the last 1 year. We've seen what has happened with unemployment. We've seen what has happened with inflation. All of this, when you bring all of that into perspective, you understand that, yes, it's not looking certain yet, but we are moving gradually towards positivity. It might be dicey for a lot of people, but then it's not impossible. Yeah.
So let's look at infrastructure.
Yeah.
In last weekend we saw some, and we've seen the rail, attempts at the rail and all of that. But generally in that area, how has the administration fared? Okay, so I would say Mr. President actually had a very good decision, made a good decision with his choice of minister. The former Senator David Umai was a very good choice when it comes to infrastructural development. And you've seen how he's come into the conversation with decisions about the Calabar Lagos rail, coastal rail road. He also did a lot when it comes to the rail line. They are springing up a lot of roads right at the country at the moment. If you look at how the man has been doing fantastic with developmental activities, a lot of projects, I think over 300 roads were inaugurated recently, and they also inaugurated the Calabar-Lagos road recently. So I would say infrastructure is looking up. There are a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of positivities. We only need to ensure that policies and implementations are done right. The challenges I've seen with Nigeria is we are very good with policy statements. We also have good plans, but when it comes to execution and implementation, we always falter. So I'm hoping it's still very dicey. Still, we are not sure yet. It's 1 year. It's difficult to measure performance in 1 year. Honestly, I tell a couple of people, 1 year performance is majorly what you've done with policy, what your plans looks like. Are they positive? Are they going to impact positively on the people? Then by the time you go into second year, we should have started seeing a lot of implementation. Then at that point, it's easier for you to judge. So you're saying by this time next year, we should be able to categorically say if the administration is going well or not? Yes, definitely. There are some gains already with the policy implementation, but then we can't outrightly say that this is positive or this is negative. It takes time before policies take effect. It takes time before actions of government take effect on the popularity, on the generality of the people. But then, by next year, we'll be able to measure accurately. Okay, by then they will have done substantial parts of the Calabar-Lagos coastal road. We'll have seen the Ajaokuta rail line fully active. We'll have seen a lot of projects implemented and how far they've gone with it. For a country that is struggling with finance, and with projects they have inaugurated recently, I think that's very, very bold. And then Minister Umahi came with the cement initiative. Well, he didn't, it was always there, but I think he now made it compulsory that the federal government of Nigeria will deal with making roads with cement. Yes. You guys in the industry, how did that come across to you? Yeah, so most of the road, I live in England, right? And I know that bulk of the HEM roads, motorways are concrete roads because they last longer and they are more durable. You can also span them. Repair is also a lot easier. They cost slightly more, but then when you look at durability, effectively you find out that they are cheaper in the long run because for bulk of that, for example, that coastal road now is very close to water. Asphalt roads are not good when you have water close by, so they are good for the north, but in the south part of the country, it's not good. So I would say those are very good decisions. Also, the concept around the roads, including adding rail line along with our roads, ensuring that the major roads are 5 lanes, those are very, very strong outlook, and I'm hoping that
hopefully, you can see the way the market is reacting to it already, because I can see investment already springing up along that line of the country. People are already looking at, okay, how can they tap into this? It's going to affect real estate. It's going to affect tourism. It's going to affect.
But there's policy inconsistency, fear still, around the corner with investors.
Yes, I agree, 100%. But then, I'm an investor. I invest, and I look at the long term. I've known lots of brands who don't plan based on 4 years. A lot of good investors don't plan based on a 4-year term, because that's very, very small to actualize anything meaningful. You look at minimum of a 10-year plan. And when you have a 10-year plan, you are looking beyond opportunities within a government. You are looking at government succession. You understand? So, and if you do that, you look at not just the immediate, you look at what are the opportunities that are available. For example, Nasarawa is doing lithium, right? Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And when it comes to lithium production, you are looking at renewable energy and batteries. Yes. You are looking at how Nigeria is struggling with power at the moment. But then when we have capacity in building batteries that can be projected for renewable energy, you see that we have the capacity to, within our country, we can produce batteries that will sustain, our power generation and usage, and that can help to move forward. I know a lot of companies who don't rely on, the national grid anymore. They have their own power. Even in my own organization, we have, a lot of support when it comes to renewable energy. So all of these things are domesticated within the country, and a lot of people can take advantage. The mining sector has been doing fantastically well since the administration.
But we haven't seen, if you say they're doing fantastically well, in what aspect? What result do they have to show for that? Okay,
so I know that before now, 3 years ago, I wasn't so familiar with mining. We have people who mine illegally, who just go there and pick stuffs. And there are a lot of benefits, natural resources that are to be mined. But right now, we're seeing the government putting up a policy saying that illegal miners can come and register properly and have certification and do the needful. You heard about what happened in Oyo State, some weeks back. So such scenario have been happening in Nasarawa, in Zamfara, in Inauguration State itself. We have a lot of issues like that. But if you have a government that is willing to bring a lot of opportunities, create an enabling environment for people to thrive individually, there are a lot of opportunities here. We have natural resources. We have enabling weather.
The government setting out the policy is one thing, but actually following
implementing
to implement it is another one. And of course, we have been talking about enabling environment, ease of doing business. But you still have a lot of taxes springing up. And those are hindrances to, doing business and all of that. So, when we have the policy, it's one thing. Like, for instance, when the cybersecurity levy just came up, and even the tax reform committee was not even aware of it.
Yes.
So these are some of the things, as we said earlier, about investors having some kind of uncertainty, even when they see opportunities to invest in the country.
I agree with you 100%. And I fault Mr. President for announcing that Forex policy and the
cybersecurity, that was the CBN.
No, the Forex policy on his inauguration.
The merging of the market.
Yes, the flotation of the Naira and also the subsidy removal. I feel that it's difficult. No government or leader can actually get the full details of his handover notes. It takes nothing less than 2 to 3 months for you to understudy it and understand what it is in there. But announcing it talks about him already understanding everything. I think he made a wrong call on his first day. I think the timing was also not good enough, because he could have just come into office, read and see what is existing, then put up a good policy. And since they started on a wrong foot, there has been policy imbalance, and it's affecting the economy. Nigeria is a very volatile economy, if you look at it, and you can see how the market has been reacting to those policies. The CBN is trying, they're struggling, but then, as of yesterday, dollar to Naira was about 1,500.
No, that's in the parallel market.
In the parallel market,
in the official market, it was 1,001 something.
Yes, but in the parallel market, a lot of people don't get access to buy from the official market. They go to the parallel market, which is the reality. But then, we saw those reactions because when it came in, dollars was hovering less than 500, if I'm not mistaken, and now it's over 1,000. That's a huge leap. So I'm hoping that subsequently, leaders,
exactly. That's what I wanted to ask you. What should be the next few steps as we enter exactly 1 year into the administration?
Yes, so they're going to be reacting because then governance has to continue. They will continue to react to challenges that emanate from their actions. I'm hoping they can learn through those challenges and tell Nigerians the truth. From experience, most Nigerian governments don't tell the complete truth. They tell us what we want to hear and what will make us feel better. But the actual sense is they hide a lot of facts. Now, investors need the complete truth for them to be able to invest their money. Now, the minute you see that you have anxiety or some sense of apprehension about the particular economy, you hold back. And that's what you're seeing. A lot of people are not bringing in the cash they have to supplement whatever it is the government is bringing. So I feel that government should begin to say the truth, learn from their errors, and also bring a lot of people who can actually advise the government in terms of how to tilt the policy directions, what to do, and also implementation. That's where the Civil Service Commission actually comes in. The Civil Service of Nigeria, I'm hoping the Nigerian government can agree with the labor and ensure that they have a good salary scheme for everyone, so that people will work with the whole of their heart without having to have premonitions of stealing from government. When people begin to do what they're supposed to do, you see a lot of implementation actualized. People go into government now, offices, to steal because they believe that what they're being paid is not enough to cater for their problem, and they have to leave. So I feel if by the time they start doing that, ultimately, maybe we'll be a better society.
All right, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Group Managing Director of Onitrades Group, also an economist, Mr. Samson Shuebi. All right, now let's take a break. After that break, we will come back to see a bit of the market. The NGX is looking good for 2 days now. We'll find out the details after this break. And for the second session this week, the NGX closed in the positive. A 0.53% increase on the all-share index is what it closed with at 98,383.04. Seems the market has slipped back to the 98,000 level when we're not looking. Well, equity cap has now also gone beyond the 55.5 trillion, now at 55.65 trillion naira, after it added 298 billion naira at the close of 294 billion naira at the close of trade on Tuesday. It looks like some things are coming back there. We see a lot of attention, in the OMO, the open market operations now, and it seems not just the CBN that is using it, it seems the federal government is also using it. So using it as an instrument for two things. First of all, to increase foreign portfolio investment, that's the dollars we're looking for, and also to mop up liquidity from the economy. I know some numbers did come out this morning. I can't remember the number, but the money in circulation seems to be dropping according to the latest data. So it might be that the instrument is really working, the treasury bill and the bond for the very first 5 or 4 months, and now the government is looking at OMO as the instrument to mop up and increase FPIs. But let's settle on the NGX this morning and see what's going on there with Mr. Abdulrasheed Momo. Mr. Momo, good morning, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good morning.
So 2 days now, we see positive close at the NGX. Has this come to stay? Should we hold our breath?
Well, I always speak based on my technicals and my charts. Yesterday, there was a report. The market, for the period, let's say for the period of May, the market was at the peak of about 100,000 points, and it dropped about 96,000 points. Now there's a critical resistance level I'm watching closely. At that point is 98,428.9. That level, the market has tested that level 4 times this month and has not broken that level. So as we speak now, I'm watching the market scenario. The index is now 98,456. So we have broken that level, and we need to watch if market will continue or there will be a reversal. If market breaks that level, then we are likely to go back to about 100,000 points.
But we don't know when this could happen. We can only just watch. Do we know what's driving this return of the positive sentiment back to the NGX? Because yields are still booming in the fixed income markets.
Yeah, definitely. If you look at the whole market scenario, it's been a huge drop. I mean, it's been a huge drop. We're looking from the period of April, the market moved from about 104,000 points to about 96,000 points. I mean, about 96,000 points plus. So, I mean, that's a huge drop. And these are areas where you see traders coming in. As well as say the market, we have investors and traders. We've seen stocks that have dropped. I mean, if you look at especially the banking sector, they've been the worst hit lately. And if you compare what they paid last year and according to, I mean, if you relate it to current market price now, you know that it's on the high side in terms of returns on dividend payout. So I feel traders are beginning to look at these areas and enter the market. It might not be for long, but I mean it has created room for people to buy low and sell high. But what I can say that in the long term, I always look at the banking because they are the most volatile. I don't want to mention any name now, but if you look at the banking sector, as I said, they were the worst hit, and I think there's room for them to do some, at least 50% of what they lost. We're likely to see that come up, and that's what we are seeing now.
So that could serve as the most attractive.
Yeah, they've always, anytime volume, they've been the one in terms of volume traded, has always been the banking sector.
Yeah, but it does look like if you're going to invest in the banking sector, you have to be up on your toes and always, watching out, because as you noted, they're very volatile. So it may not be a very good long-term hold.
Volatility is key. Volatility is key. As I said, there are different types of players in the market. There are some stocks that are not volatile. Some stocks that, okay, let me give you an example. You see stocks like Seplat. You see that when we've seen stocks drop, those ones are more of defensive stocks. They don't move. So there's some investors that in those kind of stocks, it's a safe haven. You see stocks like Geregun. You see stocks like Transcorp Power. Those heavyweights, they don't move. But in terms of volatility, in terms of traders, because we have traders market where all they do is buy low and sell high. This is the kind of market they want. So, and the best place you can get such traction is mainly the banking sector, because there are a lot of in and outs, ups and downs happening in that sector, which is always the best for most traders.
All right, Mr. Mumba, before we let you go, what has the last 1 year been like for the stock exchange or the stock market in Nigeria, seeing that today is exactly 1 year since President Bola Tinubu was sworn into office?
Okay, what I can say is that this administration, I think from the day Mr. President announced the subsidy, the market reacted a different way. The market has been bullish. This government has been some people might not have been favored, but has really favored the stock market. The stock market got to an all-time high of about 106,000 points, which we've never experienced. Till date, the market actually started, I think the market started about 74,000 points, and since then the market has been on the uptrend. So in terms of, we normally say the stock market is the barometer of any economy. Yeah, things might not be looking good, perhaps for the future, if all policies on ground they are working on now can help in terms of the future. But the market has, and you can see the recapitalization of the banks coming up again, more inflow for investors, trying to get more foreign investors in. But for now, what I can say that the market for this government has been the best so far, the highest in the history of the stock market.
All right, Mr. Momo, thank you for your observation of the markets in 1 year. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
So that's it. The NGX has done hit new high within the 1 year of President Bola Tinubu. The market loves President Tinubu. Let's see what the next 1 year would look like. But there'll be an elaborate conversation on that to look at the market and their performance in the last 1 year at 1 p.m. Will Ibon will have that. Ladi Williams will also be here. That's 1 p.m. during Business Incorporated, when you will have 55 minutes of conversations around the world of business. I'm Mini John Mekwa. Let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studio.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us. We're still on the Sunrise Daily, and this morning we're talking generally about the past 1 year of Mr. President, the federal government in particular, right now. Adeni Kunu joins us. He's an international public affairs analyst. He joins us from Dallas, Texas in the U.S. Thank you for joining us this morning, Mr. Kunu. So here we are, 1 year after. It's about this time, May 29, 2023, when the president was being sworn in. Between that time and now, how would you say Nigeria has fared under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? Mr. Kunu, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mr. Kunu?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes, good morning.
Okay, great.
I can hear.
So it's about 365 days, about this time, May 29, 2023, that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was sworn in as the next Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. How would you say, 365 days after, that Nigeria has fared under his administration?
Well, I think that the first thing we'd look at is the communication logjam, or I'll say the miscommunication among the respective persons working for him. If we look at what has transpired in the last 24 hours with regard to what came from Bayo Ononuga and Ajuri Ngelale, you'd agree with me that that is a reflection of the kind of administration that we actually find ourselves in. One of the most important things expected of any administration is to coordinate communication, and everybody must understand the hierarchy of the missive that goes from one place to the other. So I think that that is a very good place to start with regard to what the president and his communication team have done. And it also tells you how the administration itself runs. Because if the president was said to have, to address the joint session of the National Assembly, but Ajuri Ngelale came out to tell us that what he's all out to do is to commission projects across the country. For any person who is logical, it is to tell you that there's something within the administration that doesn't perhaps reflect organization. It doesn't reflect readiness. It also doesn't reflect teamwork among the people. So that is just one of the many indications of what we've had in the past 365 days. But let me move from there and talk about other things. I feel that the first thing we must look at is to do a comparative analysis of what basic indices were last year and now. So we look at inflation. Inflation now is embracing 34-35%. It was just within the early 30s, talking about last year. If you talk about insecurity, the month of May has been a month of bloodshed because there is nobody that should talk about success or succeeding without looking at what we have in the first place, the opening part of the nation's constitution, which has to do with the responsibility of government to protect the lives and property of the citizens. So you may not want to talk about we've given X amount to this, allocated X amount to that. You have to talk about the basis of it. Primary reasons for the existence of government is protection of lives. So if I wanted to do a candid assessment of 365 days in office, I'll begin with how well the administration has protected the lives and property of Nigerians. So in terms of the protection of lives and property, it's been a catalog of destruction. And you see, for me,
So if you can hear me, Mr. Kunu, just one moment, Mr. Kunu.
Yes, please.
Those are quite, critical issues that are coming, early. But if I can quickly, go back to the issue of communication that you mentioned earlier, where would you say that the problem is coming from? I ask that because the understanding we have that there is such an office as the Chief of Staff. And Chief of Staff, by simple grammar, would mean Chief of Staff of all those who work with this particular individual, in this case in point, the President. So if you are claiming that coordination is absent within the staff of the President, case in point now, the issue of the communication team, would you say that that's the same thing that happens among the entire staff all around the President?
Let's say this. There is hierarchy with respect to responsibility, and more or less like talking about a minister who heads the departments and the agencies of government. That is primary. So let me even put it in public domain, because this is a global television station. The first thing I want to mention here, since we had the confusion within the communication team of the President, the Chief of Staff has not made a statement. It is in this type of situation that you'd expect the Chief of Staff to actually put a statement out and address the situation frontally. It tells you also that the Chief of Staff perhaps is part of those who may not understand how certain coordination should be. And of course, we've been talking about this, and I am one of the persons who has been advocating it amongst many others, that when you talk about the team of those who coordinate communication in the presidency, it has to be somebody who has been properly trained to understand communication channels, to understand how the hierarchy of communication needs are put together. So it is obvious that the people who are the workers with the President do not even understand how communication is coordinated. And that is why we have this. So where is the Chief of Staff in the communication and the miscommunication that we've been reading and watching for the past 24 hours? It is the nation's first year for this President in that office. You can do everything to avoid this kind of problem, because this is going to stay with us for a very long time. Even in all of the iniquitous approaches to certain things of the previous President, we've never had a situation where on the 365th day in office of the former President, then there was communication problems such as we see now. So I think that this is a very clear indication of how this administration works, of how some people perhaps hoard information, of the cracks in the wall of the team of Mr. President. And I make no mistake about it. If you find there is a problem in any situation, the first is you check with those handlers of the communication. Let me tell you this. According to a research done, I think 2-3 years ago, 60% of marriages break down and result in divorce because of communication problems. If you look at the problems in the last administration, it was obviously between the person who was a senior special advisor to the President on media, and of course the special advisor to the government on media. I'm talking about the Buhari administration, talking about Mr. Additional, and of course the other man. So I'm simply saying here that this is an obvious reflection of what we have been dealing with in the past 365 days. And I think it is very key not to take this as just some very minor issue. It's a major issue indicative of the crack in those who indeed are crack among those or the functions of the president.
I think it's also instructive, Mr. Kunu, to underscore why the communication ambit is not just within the office of the president, but also something that some would say spreads all across the entire expression, all the touch points of the president. Case in point, another issue that has been mentioned over and over again is that of communication that go out from the federal government of Nigeria, and that the president has to step in from time to time. An example, just one example of several that might be pointed out, is that which came from the Central Bank of Nigeria concerning that issue of the instruction from the central bank to the banks that there is that percentage that ought to be going from the accounts of people for every transaction, talking about the cybersecurity levy, that and a number of other issues like that. Now, the president had to step in terms of communication, not just from the president's office now, but from the government to the people, because you were talking about inflation and a number of other downers that the people have had, experiences people have had from the federal government so far over the past 1 year. The challenge of communicating these things to people is one that a number of people would say, if only I knew, maybe if only I understood why, if only I understood exactly what is going on here, maybe I would be seeing it differently. But then that communication isn't happening the way it ought to happen. Another, would be that of the journalist that was not found until we heard at some point that some activity of the federal government saw the Minister of Information making one statement or the other about that. So one is wondering, because even now the Minister of Information that is kind of doing the firefighting, extinguishing of some of these issues that should arise. What is missing in the communication within the federal government of Nigeria, ministries, departments, and agencies and all, to the people?
In the first place, intention is very key, because don't forget that anytime we talk about the communication channels, feedback is a very key part of the channels of communication. But oftentimes, particularly recent scientists within the communication field have said, you also have to look at what the intention is, because intention is actually the beginning or the fulcrum of whatever it is that you put out there. And let me say this, please. When people communicate, they communicate because it is key for them to get information out, which is primary. But when information is perhaps not understood, then you go back to what was the purpose of the communication. Was it to rescue a situation? Was it to keep people abreast of information? Then apart from that, you also must look at the aspect of the agencies of information. Apart from the individual in question, what about the respective channels through which information is actually out? Now, you've mentioned respective areas where the president will either be the one doing the talking, and you have some other aspects where the president is actually trying to quell the fire. It tells you first that this administration believes that there are too many people who should not know what, and there are certain persons who are those within the favored books of the president. And when you are dealing with the public, I've always said it, before President Bola Ahmed Tinubu got to Abuja, you must understand the kind of communication or the communication approaches that he had in Lagos, even when it comes to the issue of who is president of the country or who is governor of Lagos State. So you look at a situation where after the president, assumed office, the governor of Lagos State did not announce his cabinet until the president announced his cabinet. That simply means somebody was waiting for the person in Abuja to communicate who the ministers actually were and now are before he did his own. That tells you what the intention of communication is. So we have to look at the intention of those working with Mr. President. Are they really responsible, and are they really loyal to the constitution of the country or to the president who gave them the opportunity to serve? Because you must understand all of these things. So I see a situation where people feel they cannot talk because they were given graciously this position. Let's make it clear. For anybody who occupies a ministerial role in any administration, you've been brought in because you have a modicum of capacity to help solve the problem of the president, who is not the alpha and omega in all instances. And that is why anybody who occupies an office is there to help rectify problems of the incapacities of the person who appoints them to office. Right now, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has an obvious capacity, accounting. He doesn't understand communication. So a situation where the person who is Minister of Information doesn't have to tell Mr. President that this is not proper, sir, this is how we do it, because the person feels I'm going to get sacked from this privileged position that I occupy, then the president would always have problems. Ajuri Ngelale is a seasoned communicator by virtue of his training and what he has done before the appointment. The Mr. Ononuga also has to be respected with what he has done in that regard. But there you have power tussle, you have power play. Some persons believe that, okay, I'm the one responsible for coordinating this. And if you check deeply, you find out that money also is in the work. Certain persons believe that certain allocations should be made for them to organize this. And because some persons feel they are not within the favored books, they have to actually do it the way they want to do it. Because if you read carefully what Ngelale put out, following the miscommunication that is evident, it tells you that certain persons obviously feel that their feathers have been ruffled and they must hold a position. And in this situation, as we already said when you were talking with me earlier, this is where the chief of staff comes in. And who is the chief of staff? What is the area of expertise or the capacity of the chief of staff? Because oftentimes some positions are given because people are close to the number one man in the country prior his assumption of office. But does the person have the expertise to deliver? Does the person even understand what his or her terms of reference is or are to be able to guide?
Well,
so
Mr.
I need
Kunu,
to say this, that there are lots of things happening within the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu that we are now seeing. And there is no way to argue this away.
Okay, well, Mr. Kunu, perhaps one of the issues, and I'm glad that you mentioned the fact that, this also has to do with ministers. So let's talk to them. I mean, the ministerial briefings have been going on for quite some time now. And as at yesterday, I understand about 17 ministers have briefed. And some of them, of course, will still continue until all of them have addressed the nation. What would be your assessment of those expressions? Some of them spoke offhand, some of them read speeches, some of them made presentations, and of course took questions from journalists and those in the hall. From what you have heard, from the things that has been spoken by the Minister of the Information Minister, Minister of Finance, Minister of Industry, and a host of them like that, the Attorney General, Minister of Justice, and several others, what would be your assessment? Because they are the expressions, they are like the tentacles through the federal government. The president is administering the country. What would be your assessment of Nigeria under the president's men, so to speak?
I think they are towing the line of their employer. I have to say that candidly here. And one of the things that people must understand in contemporary leadership is impression. As a matter of fact, when you talk about the operations of the United Nations, there was a time where you never used to check things like, I think, how people saw what is being done. The word left me now. But basically, everything that I have heard glossed over or mentioned slightly the problems that this administration has caused for the citizens in terms of their daily lives, the loss of jobs, the difficulty in meeting basic needs, and for a fact, which is obvious, The Labour Party is still in a deadlock with this administration that has been self-eulogizing, especially with the statement made. Now, let me give you this picture. Mr. Wale Edu is the person I want to begin with. He said that the federal government has restored or will restore or will start paying again 50 households, but of course 75 million people. In January, when that particular program was suspended because they talked about fraud, we landed in the Better Edu crisis, where eventually she was vindicated. But right now, we have still not had closure, despite all the facts we had in public domain. In the statement made by Mr. Wale Edu, he said in a line or two that the way the administration started the policy affected people, but government is actually making effort to rectify it. Excuse me, to me, Mr. Wale Edu is somebody that I know personally. But when it comes to leadership, you have to say it as it is, not emphasizing or actually showing empathy with people having caused them such painful experience because of policies not put right is something that I feel he had the ability to do better with. The emphasis was on what government actually is doing. Then he also talked about the provision of 1 million to certain persons within the nanotechnology sector and all of that. But the emphasis was people are still suffering. The minimum wage is still a challenge. You've not been able to address core issues with labor. Whatever it is that any other person said, we cannot gloss over the fact that this administration is still in or at loggerhead with labor. And I think that that is fundamental. If you look at other ministers who communicated, it is all and more about what this administration has done and the fact that it will do more. But the reality is people are still in pain. So when you lead, let them connect with you in respect of the pain that you have caused them. Then you begin to tell us feasible ways to approach the issues on ground to provide solutions. Whatever it is that government does, if it doesn't affect the improvement of the pockets of the people, then I think that the administration has not actually done the right thing.
Which also leads me to this other question. You know, as I said, and I've raised that issue quite a number of times, and even this morning we've asked Professor Madaki, who joined us earlier. Every time we are having conversation about the federal government, we always talk only about the president. We forget, or rather maybe we do not talk about the fact that the people who are directly affected by whatever policy of the federal or state government, they live in states. And the state governments seem to just stay under the cover of the fact that it's the president that is under the flag. Everyone is calling out the president, everyone is calling out the federal government, but it would seem like we're giving the governors a slap on the wrist. I'm wondering if you think that there's been any significant collaboration or significant impact of the governors themselves in their work over the past 1 year as well, on the lives of the people that live within those states.
Yeah, it's important to also connect these dots. The reason the focus happens to be on the president is the reality of the fact that the context of this celebration, the context of this conversation is 365 days of the president in office. So let's come to the state. What are the things that have happened in the past 1 year within the state? We obviously must agree that there is hardly any major breathing that gets done in a state like ours, which is in Lagos, without the federal government making a statement. Let's look at it. The destruction or demolition of
before we look at it, just one moment, Mr. Kunu. Before we look at it, we'll need to take one quick message before we continue. I'll be back with you to close this out.
All right. Thank you.
Well, thank you for staying with us. Well, Mr. Kuno, unfortunately, I'm going to have to wait until you get back from the U.S. to continue this conversation because we really have to go to the National Assembly in any moment from now. I have to thank you so much for your time today. Adeniyi Kuno is an international public affairs analyst, joined us from Dallas, Texas in the U.S. Thank you again for your time this morning. Well, in the meantime, my colleagues in Abuja, Chamberlain and Markwe, I understand that we're supposed to take a trip shortly.
Well, I wonder, yeah, that's the truth right there, what you see, because we understand that the president will be arriving in the National Assembly soon. Yes, I know there was a lot of back and forth yesterday, conflicting messages. You're part of what you were also talking about just now. So the thing is, our correspondents there tell us that they're getting word that he may arrive there anytime soon. So they're all getting set. So these are live images coming through from the National Assembly, where the president is expected to address the joint session of the National Assembly. So who knows? Because earlier today, when our team had arrived there wasn't any advance party, no security team whatsoever to indicate that he was going to be there, which usually will be the case. So, but eventually, this is the latest information we're getting from our team on the ground there about what may likely happen. So, as we say, all eyes will be on this particular scenario to see if and when the president arrives there.
Well, Chamberlain, there certainly will be implications for this, but as you already highlighted, it is the joint sitting of the National Assembly which the president will be addressing, and that explains the red chair we see right there on the chambers. Don't forget that the Senate president is the president of the National Assembly as well, president and chairman, beg your pardon, of the National Assembly joint committee, joint sitting. So you'll see his chair there. The president will be, I think we should be seeing his chair somewhere at the bottom there because he's a special guest of the National Assembly. But that's what we're getting now. This is in contradiction to what we saw of the president's special advisor releasing that statement, countering what it was saying that the special advisor on information and strategy had initially released. But this is what we're getting. The special advisor on information and strategy had said that the president will be addressing a joint session of the National Assembly, which has lined up a program to commemorate 25 years of the nation's democratic journey at both the executive and legislature level. So this is extremely significant, a quarter of a century, and also the first year of the president in office. What would the speech be containing? What will it be like when the president eventually shows up? But the word that we have today is that in a few moments from now, the president will be at the National Assembly for that epoch-making speech. I do not know how it's going to go down. There certainly will be implications based on what it is that our guest was saying earlier and the analysis that he has given so far. I know that this conversation will not be over, but certainly we can look forward to what the president will say today, can't we?
Oh, most certainly. And all we can do is just wait. We have moments to that time. But that's the show today. Thank you so much for the privilege of your time and attention. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm Mal Pelgrim, yourself.
I'm Chamberlain, so we'll see you next time.